Hi everybody, and welcome to 10 steps to mastering how you respond to a request for a pay rise, and one suggestion for preventing as many of those requests occurring as perhaps you get at the moment. The first step is probably the most critical, and it is very easy not to do because this is a topic that can really get to us. If we own the practice, it's our business. Someone asking us for a pay rise essentially feels like they're taking money from us. And that can feel difficult, can feel annoying, can feel frustrating. And so it can lead to a very automatic response. When actually what we need, first step above everything else, is to listen. We have to listen and to really understand what this individual is asking for and what are their reasons for asking for a pay increase. To ask these questions with genuine curiosity, to really want to understand what are their reasons. So be curious, listen, ask questions, and try to find out what the reasons are for them wanting to have a pay increase. What has changed to make them want to ask for a pay increase? Step one is to listen. Step two is then to evaluate the individual's performance. I have done a separate video on this about 4 objective elements for evaluating the performance of an individual. So after having had the request, say to the individual that you want to take some time to reflect and think about the request. And when you've done that, is then to sit down and look at those 4 objective ways in which you can evaluate the impact, the performance of the individual. So looking at things as, can they do the job? How well have they done the job over the last 12 months? What's their motivation to do the job? How are they driven? What's the impact on the broader team? These kind of things, but evaluate the performance of the individual. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is then to compare others in the practice. I know we don't like to use the word compare, but ultimately we have to make sure that, roughly speaking, especially in terms of people with similar job roles, that they're not wildly different. So look at other people in the practice. What are they being paid? Where does this person sit relative to them? Maybe you want to consider length of service as a demonstration of loyalty is important to you, but ultimately we want to make sure there's not a wildly different salary. There are not wildly different salaries paid between individuals, especially doing similar roles. Okay, so to compare to others in the practice. Number 4 then is to do some benchmarking with practices and competitors local to you. What's the market rates as to what people are being paid? Is that person above or below those rates? Always remembering that it's not always comparing apples and apples, and just to be aware of that, because there are lots of other different things that practice can offer, but at the same time to get a feel by looking at adverts of what other people are paying. Okay, so do some benchmarking with local competitors in terms of what they are paying. Number 5 is to then lay out all the different options and evaluate all those different options. It might be that you could give them nothing at all. That's one of the options. Could be that you give them a certain percentage increase. Could be given another percentage increase, but with a bit of a bonus. So lay out all different options. Don't automatically dismiss any of them, just lay them out and then look at what are the pros and cons of each option. So lay out all the options and weigh up the pros and cons for each. Then we have to make a decision. So make a decision at that point, make a clear decision as to what you think is the best option for you. At the same time, considering what are the boundaries within which you are prepared to negotiate. So, having weighed up all the options, make a decision as to what you want to do. Then communicate it to the individual, be very clear as to what the decision is and what the rationale is for making that decision. See how they respond and be prepared to negotiate, as we've talked about. So negotiate within the boundaries that you set out, but be clear on those boundaries and make sure you don't go out of those boundaries in terms of what you've set. Right? But be prepared to negotiate. Ask questions about what other things are important to that individual. So you start to get a feel about some other things that may help in terms of you could give them that would really help them in terms of how they feel about working at the practice and contributing to the success of your dental practice. Once that's clear, then make sure expectations are super clear at that point. So agree expectations, summarize, and then send an email to that person. Absolutely laying out what those expectations are so there can be no misunderstandings. And at that point, follow through from your side and make sure you do what you say you're going to do. Also then, book in a follow-up meeting. It's often easy to go, phew, that's done, thank God, I don't want to do that, I've dealt with that, that's sorted. But actually book in a follow-up meeting, make sure that everything you've agreed has happened. Because you may have agreed, for example, certain changes in behaviours or certain additional tasks that with that person, and you want to make sure that they are being upheld and that's happening. So organise a follow-up meeting to make sure that things actually happen and things are put in place. Okay, so these are the 10 steps to mastering how you deal with a request for a pay rise. To add on to this, I want to give you one suggestion for how you can hopefully prevent as many of these ad hoc requests that are maybe occurring at the moment. And that is to create a pay review structure to your business. So choose a date, typically the beginning of the year or beginning of the financial year. And once a year, that's when you're going to review the pay for employees within your practice. You communicate this and make this clear and let them know that this is the only time at which you'll be reviewing pay. The only exception to this will be when for a promotion or a different role. So that's the only exception. All right. So you stop these ad hoc requests coming, and instead you then look at the overall situation in terms of performance of the practice. You can look at inflation, you can look at all these other factors and make a call about the overall what you want to do with your salaries for the practice. And it may not be to do anything, but it might be to do something as an overall premise, overall kind of number. At the same time, then you can also look individually to see how people are performing. And this brings back to performance of individuals and see whether at that time you think that person warrants a pay increase for the performance over the year. So you're giving a structure to it so that people know that's going to happen at a specific time. It helps you ensure that everybody keeps in a line because you can see where people are as a overall group. Keep people within corridors so you don't get people suddenly being all over the place and on very different salaries. It also helps you be proactive about managing pay. And that will ultimately help you retain your people. Okay, so those 10 different steps to mastering how to respond to a pay increase. I hope that gives you a level of confidence, and also to be able to step back now knowing you know how to approach this when somebody asks you for it. It's okay for people to ask. So let them ask. It doesn't mean you have to agree, and then deal with it in this way. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.